Good Shabbos, everybody, and thank you once again for your ongoing support in our services, being part of our services online. And I hope that some of you will find it within you to start making your way back to Shaare as we open on February the 7th. That's Monday week. Now, the question that I posed in the Shabbat flyer was, in light of the Colleyville Texas hostage crisis, is it time for the Jewish communities to quit being so welcoming? And this sort of was triggered by last week. For the first time in my career, and made worse since we were live streaming, my wife Elizabeth told me that as she watched me in services at Shaare on the live stream, she was scared. For the first time, she was actually scared. She was scared because of what happened at the synagogue in Texas. She was scared because what we may have thought was only a possibility was now very much a reality. Jews should not be afraid to go to Shaare. Jews should not have to pay for expensive security to feel safe at Shaare. And yet, too often, we do worry. Anti-Semitism is unfortunately alive and well, and don't think it's just south of the border, because that's not true. Very live and well here in Montreal as well. We are so acutely aware of the reality that anti-Semitism is still a major problem that I don't know about you, but I certainly was absolutely astounded when I read what the FBI agent in charge of the Dallas field office originally said about the hostage crisis in Colleyville, Texas. This is what he said. He said, "We do believe from our engagement with this subject that he was singularly focused on one issue, and it was not specifically related to the Jewish community. But we are continuing to work to find out the motive." I've got to tell you something. That I think that every Jew who read that must have had the same reaction. Huh? What? Are you kidding me? Not specifically related to the Jewish community? You know, to us, it's very painfully obvious that the attack was specifically related to the Jewish community. Why else would he have chosen to take a hostage at a synagogue on a Shabbat morning? To get someone sprung out of jail? Why not take a hostage at a church on Sunday, or a mosque on Friday, or a Walmart, or a CVS, or a gas station? The person he was trying to get freed from prison, Shaare Zedek, is a notorious anti-Semite. She's a Pakistani doctor serving an 86-year sentence for shooting at American soldiers in Afghanistan. Really top-class, upstanding citizen. The FBI said that she is an Al-Qaeda operative. She claims, certainly in her arrest and in her conviction, that her conviction was a Jewish conspiracy, and that furthermore, she tried to insist that jurors at her trial take a DNA test she claimed it would be fair because if any of them proved to be Israelis or Zionists, it would be unfair to her in her trial. As if Israeli or Zionist is even something that shows up in your DNA. What about all those ardently Zionist evangelical Christians? I'm not sure if they were included or excluded out of that group. As one Twitter comment put it, just a coincidence that he targeted a house of worship used by this one particular religious minority. A coincidence that seems to happen an awful lot throughout history. There was a loud public outcry. And what happened? The FBI had to issue a sort of a corrective statement. And in a meeting with the Anti-Defamation League, the FBI Director Christopher Wray said, "Let me make it clear and blunt. The FBI is and has been treating Saturday's events as an act of terrorism targeting the Jewish community." He also said, this was not some random occurrence. It was intentional. It was symbolic. And we are not going to tolerate anti-Semitism in this country. We recognize that the Jewish community, in particular, has suffered violence and faces very real threats from really across the entire hate spectrum. Now, even if the FBI's office guy in charge there in Dallas seems a little clueless, because obviously he was with the original statement, we're glad that the head of the FBI understands the problem with anti-Semitism is in America. And of course, anti-Semitism is still alive and well here in Canada. You probably remember that just a few years ago, a man wearing a kippah was physically assaulted right here in Montreal. What you might also remember, it was, I think, last summer, with all the Palestinian attacks, or the marches downtown, where innocent Jews were attacked for being present. Jewish communities across North America are asking themselves, what now? What do we do now? The Jewish community is so small, it's so tight-knit, that we do often feel like one big family. And I think almost every North American Jew felt as my wife did. That could have been me. Could have been us. Most synagogues in North America already have some rudimentary forms of security, such as doors with cameras and people only allowed in after they've identified themselves. I'm not going to start telling you what we have here. I think we're sort of ahead of the game when it comes to security. But the question is that enough? The rabbi in Colleyville, Rabbi Charlie Citron Walker, not only allowed the attacker in, but he also sat him down and made him a cup of tea. Now, you have to understand a couple of things here. The guy, the attacker, scouted out the place first. He didn't just show up on a Saturday morning. He scouted the place out to see if he could actually get in. And as part of that scouting out, he actually made contact with the rabbi before, and he gave him some sob story, so that when he did show up, there was a connection there, and the rabbi let him in. The question is now, is it time for the Jewish community to quit being so welcoming? I don't believe that's necessary. And I believe, furthermore, that it would be a mistake. In this week's Torah reading, Mishpatim, we are commanded not to oppress the stranger. The Torah itself charges us, you shall not oppress a stranger, for you know the feelings of the stranger, having yourselves been strangers in the land of Egypt. Not only that, but the Torah tells us over and over again, 36 times, that we must be kind to the stranger. In Leviticus, we've been told to love the stranger. The stranger who resides with you shall be to you as a native among you, and you shall love him as yourself, for you were aliens in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. And even after all that he went through, Rabbi Citron Walker says, we must continue to be hospitable. In an interview after he was released, he said, we have to continue to be hospitable, we have to be secure, and we must find ways to strike a balance. So the question is, how do we find a balance without simply shutting our doors to strangers? And I thought about it. I've thought about it quite a lot. And I suggest that we have to view synagogue security in the same way that we view many other manageable risks in life, such as driving a car. There are approximately 4,200 synagogues across North America, combined US and Canada. If we assume that they all have services on Shabbat, that's 218,400 Shabbat services per year. The fact that in the last year, one of those services resulted in a hostage-taking situation is a terrible thing. But 1 out of 218,400, I'm sure you'll agree with me, is rather minuscule and a rather minuscule risk. Your chances of dying in a car accident in Canada during 2019 were 1 in 21,566. Despite that risk, none of us stopped driving. We take precautions. We wear our seat belts. We make sure our cars are well maintained and that they're well insured. We make sure new drivers must have training. But we don't quit driving, and we don't insist on only driving armored vehicles that could survive any mishap. We accept that there is a certain level of risk. Our approach to synagogue security should be similar. We take reasonable precautions. We refuse entry to people who clearly seem disturbed. We should also have training. Rabbi Walker credited the training he went through as being essential in teaching him how to behave and when to act. By the way, you should know that training's been going on here in Montreal for about 2 years. You're not aware of it, it's not public, but many of us have already had that training. And it's just going to continue to be updated. The hostages, remember, were not rescued. They escaped. They escaped thanks to the rabbi's ability to keep calm and act when the time was right. But we do not go so far as to take the steps that would guarantee nothing could ever go wrong, because that's not possible. We don't turn our synagogues into fortresses. We don't reject all strangers out of hand. Rabbi Citron Walker also said, I've welcomed people into the congregation that don't look like your stereotypical visitor to a Jewish synagogue, over and over and over again. And people are looking to pray. People are looking for community. And they're asking the question, do I belong? We have an obligation to stress to them and the whole community. And the community's response must also be that yes, you very much do belong. Welcoming strangers is a core Jewish value. And that doesn't mean only the Jews we don't know. When we were strangers in Egypt, we were outsiders. And that's what the Torah is talking about. The Jewish people are some of the most ardent advocates for refugees. We ourselves were sponsors of refugees when they were seeking shelter in Canada. Because we know more than anyone else what it means to be fleeing for your life, only to be turned away from country after country. The legend says that Abraham's tent was open on all four sides so that he could welcome visitors from wherever they were coming. Now, obviously, it goes without saying that we should take reasonable safety precautions, but it's also vitally important that we remain true to our Jewish values, especially including our care to the stranger. To do otherwise would be to let the anti-Semites win, and that we must never do. Shabbat Shalom. We are going to continue now in the